Everybody, welcome back to the Hootie Hoo KSU Football Podcast. My name is Griffin Nichols. I'm your host. Please like and subscribe. You can find us on all streaming platforms, both the podcast version and the video version. So please check it out. The response to the review of the Wake Forest game has been terrific. Thank you very much. I know that time is the most valuable thing you have. And so spending some time with me, I really appreciate it. Have got a lot of good feedback. So thank you. Before we dive into this week's preview, I want to kind of recap last week. First and foremost, the larger spectrum of college football. You had Ohio State, Texas was the big game Saturday. And a lot of hate for Arch Manning. I don't know if it's, necessary or not. It's a tough place to play. It's a tough team to be playing. To think you're going to go in there as your first star on the road and be lights out, I think our expectations are a little high. I'm sure he'll be just fine, and Texas will be just fine. Good game, a lot of defense, which is to be expected at the start of the season. But no, I enjoyed it. It was nice to have football back for sure. But 14-7 is your final there with Ohio State winning. As we move on later in the day, you have the big upset of the day, which is the Alabama Crimson Tide losing to the Florida State Seminoles in Tallahassee. Bama was a 13.5 point favorite in that game. Lost by, I believe, 14, 31-17, I think is the final. So that's 14 points, carry the one. And again, the reactions are not really... it's probably too much in each direction. Is Bama finished? Are they over? Of course not. Of course not. Bama will be just fine. Is Florida State the greatest team in the country? They're not, but they're better. A few other things to take from that game. Florida State did look like the better team, even though Bama definitely has the most talent. So what's the interest level, I guess, and what was the preparation? Thinking about preparation, I know for sure, for a fact, that Florida State was reconstructing their stadium this summer, and they didn't have a spring game. So also all the media availability was canceled, so no media had seen the team. So there was no tape that Alabama could reference to scout ahead of this game against Florida State. They had to go back to older tape from Central Florida with Malzahn and Auburn, and with Tony White with his stops at Nebraska and Syracuse before that. So Bama, definitely did not know what was coming. I think that, again, on the other side with Florida State, I think you have a team that had heard how terrible they were. Going 2-10 is absurd for a program of that stature. And this was their opportunity to get back on the map, and they did. They took advantage of it. They were the better team. They dominated both lines of scrimmage. Bama was shockingly outplayed across the board. But I also don't think it's the end of the world. I think sometimes, at the end of the day, it's an out-of-conference game, and it's the first game of the season. You'll be just fine. You got plenty of SEC games out there to win, and they'll still be a contender because it is Alabama. At the end of the day, the guys they've got playing are as good, if not better, than anybody else out there. It still has one of the best recruiting classes in the country currently. So Bama's going to be fine. Everybody just slowly roll. The last game of the night on Saturday was the LSU, well, not the last game, but the last big game, I guess, was the LSU Clemson game. Great game. I enjoyed it a great deal. I'm still confused about what a touchdown is because LSU threw a touchdown that was a thing of beauty. Receiver catches in the corner, falls into the end zone, kicks the pylon, touchdown. They're doing the review and the commentators are talking about his feet, where was the ball, and they come back and say it was an incomplete pass, and everybody's like, wait, what? So they had to go back and replay it. And even, if you watch these broadcasts, they always have the referee there to help the commentators out. He was confused by it as well. He's like, that's a touchdown. So, but something came up the next day in the South Carolina-Virginia Tech game, something similar to a completed catch, almost that pro level of what a catch is, completed all the way through the catch. It doesn't bobble, nothing. It's just ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. A touchdown is a touchdown. Finally, on Sunday, you had the Notre Dame-Miami game. Full transparency. Miami was winning 24-7, and they were dominating both lines of scrimmage. I thought the game was over. It was a long weekend. I went to bed. Woke up the next morning, I saw it was 24-21, so they let Notre Dame kind of creep back in. But I think they kicked a field goal as time was as time was getting down for Miami to win 24-21. Finally, you have the TCU versus the UNC game that took place on Monday night. UNC got their doors blown off. They were not there. It's going to be a long year for UNC. They're not a very good football team. Whomever the coach is, it doesn't matter. They're not a very good football team. So I guess if you're UNC, just looking for improvements as time goes on. But yikes, that was something. Very thirsty. As we get ready for this week, I went back and I watched the Indiana Old Dominion game. I went back and watched the Wake Forest KSU game. So first of all, the Indiana game. That game, that's something. Okay, so Old Dominion scores 2 touchdowns, both with long quarterback runs. It's just a quarterback draw. Immediately, I thought about Dexter Williams, and I thought that that's going to be a problem for Indiana because he's more mobile than the quarterback for Old Dominion. I also saw that the Old Dominion quarterback had thrown 3 interceptions. There's also a punt return. There's a special teams touchdown, a punt return for a touchdown, and 3 interceptions, basically saying that Indiana didn't look all that great. And we'll see. But the quarterback comes over from Cal, Mendoza, and he was pretty good last year given what he was dealing with. I think that offense, I watched Cal a few times last year, and that offensive line was bad. That kid was running for his life every single play, and he was a tough kid. He took a lot of shots, is mobile, can throw the ball. I did like him, but if you don't have an offensive line, it doesn't matter. And so he will be a problem. He's a good player. It looks like basically Indiana was doing a lot of zone read was their big plays in the game with their touchdown scores. Nothing that Kennesaw State didn't see with Wake. Actually, I'd say it's a very similar running game than what they saw with Wake, and we know how that went, which was very good. But going back and watching the Kennesaw State-Wake Forest game, being at a game in person, it's difficult to pick up certain aspects of it, especially if it's further away from your seats as far as the push that's happening at the line, depending on what your angles are, but also just what the defense is doing. One thing I commented on with the review was the Wake Forest quarterback kept running backwards or running out of bounds for no gain when he would get rattled in the pocket. And the reason I bring that up is because it looked like in real time that he was trying to make a play, or maybe they had a read, kind of an option play there, and he was running around the end. Going back and watching the tape, it doesn't look like that. He's running for his life, and he's just getting out of bounds. Now, a more experienced quarterback would probably throw the ball away instead of taking a 2-yard loss, but he's rattled. I mean, the Kennesaw State's defense is what I took away from that game was outstanding. I mean, they were really, really good. And it makes sense because, like I was saying, just the eye test when I was sitting there, Wake Forest had larger players than Kennesaw State, but not a larger heart. I mean, the Kennesaw players, especially on defense, played really well. I've already talked about Bennett, running back, just a solid running back. Hopefully we see a lot more of him. And then Dexter Williams as a quarterback against Wake Forest was fine. The offense wasn't amazing by any means, but they did move the ball several times. They looked more competent, honestly, than the Wake Forest offense I saw. And based on fan reactions at the stadium, being at Wake Forest, the Wake Forest faithful were not happy. They were not happy with their defense. They're not happy with the offensive production. But you have to tip your hat to the other team as well. If you're not happy with your offensive production, let's not forget that the defense is playing really well, and that may be why your offense is struggling. If your defense is struggling, then that may be the offense. Moving the ball and being difficult to stop and looking for open looks and going really fast. Again, the stats came out this weekend that Kennesaw State went the second fastest team in the country as far as time between snaps, and they were moving. And when you see it real time like that, it's real hard for a defense to go back and get set to get ready to play the game. So, yeah, I was just impressed. I was impressed with, I didn't know what to expect, I guess. You see a 17.5 point favorite or an underdog for Kennesaw State against Wake. And that game was very evenly matched. It really was. So it actually makes this game a little harder, honestly. But let's dive into it. You're looking at Kennesaw State versus Indiana. It'll be at noon on Saturday, FS1. Your current point spread is Indiana is favored by 35.5. Yeah, 35.5. So we'll kind of check off, we'll kind of get some feelings about that before we wrap up. I've written a couple things down I was just going to read from. The Owls are coming off a gritty 10-9 loss to Wake Forest in their season opener, proving they can compete with the Power 4 team despite transitioning to FBS just 2 years ago. Under Jerry Mack, the Owls are leaning on a veteran defense, 80% retention rate, and transfer-heavy rosters to make waves in the American Athletic Conference. Meanwhile, the Hoosiers kicked off their 2025 campaign with a 27-14 win over Old Dominion. They had 502 yards of offense, but the coach was not pleased with the breakdowns on defense, those 2 long quarterback runs I was referencing earlier. The funny thing is that, the coach for Indiana specifically spoke about KSU's defense and how strong they were. So just in looking at KSU for a second, key players we already know, Dexter Williams. He's a former Indiana Hoosier, so he is familiar with the team. He was not there when this current coach was there. So I don't know if he transferred to Georgia Southern, the year that Signetti came in. So maybe he had some experience with him in the spring before transferring. I really don't know the dates on that. But he was not present, obviously, last year at Indiana when they had their success. But he is returning back to where he played. So we'll see kind of if that does anything. It's always good to have someone want to show out in front of the team that let them go or didn't think they were good enough. But yeah, so we'll see kind of where he is. He definitely need to work on some passing, especially the short to intermediate throws. There's a couple one-hoppers in there that kind of skipped across on some critical plays. Just the moment was too big maybe in that moment at the end of the game. But it's not a pass-based offense either. It's more of a read offense with a lot of running. So his legs were great the other night. He looked good. He looked mobile, so just do that. Linebacker Johnson, transferred from Eastern Carolina, played great. Played really well, really tough to stop. And Washington Jr., cornerback, who is the preseason All-AAC pick, he's going to be really important given the passing attack that they're about to see. I think that's really the key there. And it's one thing I mentioned on the review the other night was that Wake didn't take any deep shots. And that was something I noticed in the spring was that I feel that the defense is susceptible to some deep shots. So we'll see if they take advantage of it. We'll see if I'm right. But like I said, I think that the deep ball is a concern. So Washington being out there is very important. KSU's strengths, though, the defense, the front seven, were all over the Wake Forest backfield when I was watching the game the other day. They a lot of blitzes. With that defense, it's a lot of blitzes coming from nowhere where you're not exactly sure. It's hard to predict. A lot of stunts, a lot of twists at the line of scrimmage. And I definitely saw that. I mean, I definitely saw that the quarterback had pressure in his face the whole time, and it's where he had to kind of run out. And he was able to run out, but he never got the edge to go. He kept kind of going laterally to the sideline, which, has a lot to do with the quarterback's decision-making. But at the same time, without the pressure, he's not rolling out. He's just sitting back there being comfortable in the pocket. So we'll see. Ball control is another strength. Again, it's going to be a run-heavy game. Shorten the time that the other team gets the ball. It's the same thing we talked about all spring. Was possess the ball, score quickly. and don't wear your defense out. That's really the goal. You got to get first downs. If you get first downs, you can go really fast. If you don't get first downs, obviously you're going in and out pretty fast. So those 3 and outs are the thing to avoid at all costs, because that will wear the defense out. And that's the negative to this type of offense with going fast. But if you're successful with getting first downs, which they were the other night, then you will keep the ball for a while. You will put the defense in stressful situations because they barely have time to get lined up before you're hiking the ball again. And that can be impactful. Some weaknesses with Kennesaw State, the offensive line. They allowed 3 sacks and had a difficult time opening up holes against Wake Forest. And this is a concern. I mean, offensive line is always going to be a concern with any team. But there's a lot of heart with the running backs, that's for sure. They didn't go down just first contact. They really put their head in there and played really as well as they possibly could. Bennett's touchdown run, thing of beauty. But like I said, it's going to be something to pay attention to with how the offensive line holds up against the defense of Indiana, who I believe has an All-American on the line, linebackers in the secondary. So, it's going to be a tough task. There's a reason it's 35.5. As far as Coach Mack, his post-game comments were basically, I'll quote here, "We're not here for moral victories, but our guys showed we belong. Indiana's next, and we're coming to fight." So definitely the right thing to say. We're not getting blown out by this team. We should have won the game. No moral victories. It should have been 13-10 was the final. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. So, yeah, I like the attitude for sure to go into this, because this is the toughest probably game of the season, I would say, just based on talent. There's a couple other talented teams on the schedule, but this will be the most talented team. I need to see where Indiana's ranked. If they are ranked, I'm not 100% sure about that. I need to find that out. Looking at Indiana, so they had 312 yards passing, 190 yards rushing. They controlled the clock, and that was what stood out to me with the time. I looked at the box score, and they had the ball for 34 minutes. Just converted 8 of 13 third downs. It's just one of those things where you can't let them hold the ball the whole time. They did create those kind of blunders on defense with those long runs to the quarterback, as I mentioned earlier. But other than that, they were pretty buttoned up for sure. And Old Dominion is, not a juggernaut by any means. We'll see how that goes. Key players for Indiana, I've already mentioned Fernando Mendoza, who's the quarterback. He threw for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 45 yards. So he can run, he can throw it. Running back Tyson Lawson, he ran for 112 yards and a touchdown on 18 carries. You could definitely see as the game was going on in the Old Dominion game, how they started to wear them out, the defensive line and the defense overall. And that has a lot to do with the offense of Old Dominion not being able to possess the ball very long to give them a break. But as time goes on, the depth of these bigger schools and the possession of time with the game last week with Old Dominion and Indiana definitely wore out Old Dominion's defense. And, you would want to avoid that, obviously, if you're Kennesaw State. Donovan McCulley is a wide receiver. He's 6'5". He had 85 yards and a touchdown. So, again, this is where Washington comes into play to try to lock that person down if they're able to. So that's going to be a tough ask. 6'5" is tough. Tough to scheme against 6'5". Aiden Fisher is a linebacker. He had 12 tackles and a pick 6 against Old Dominion's defense. So now that I'm thinking about it, so I just read that, I forgot about that. So a punt return for a touchdown and a pick 6 for a touchdown. That's 2 of their touchdowns. So it's not like the offense was on fire. They just held onto the ball a great deal and just chipped away. Their strengths are definitely their offense. It's balanced. 6.2 yards per play, 48% conversion rate on third down. They can grind you down or they can throw it deep. Mike Shanahan's the play caller. for the offense. Depth, they have 18 returning starters in a top 25 transfer class. They're built to wear down teams like Kennesaw State, especially in the trenches. Home dominance, the Hoosiers are 10-2 at Memorial Stadium since 2023. Okay, that's great. Weaknesses, defensive lapses we talked about, pressure to perform. They got big games coming. Indiana does. Now, they do avoid Ohio State and Michigan, it looks like, but based on their schedule, let me double check that, make sure I'm right about that. I think I am. I just looked at it. Yeah, they avoid Ohio State, Michigan. They do play at Oregon and at Iowa, but they avoid Ohio State, Michigan. So, I don't know if they're going to play flat or not. I don't know if you can get up for this. I hopefully last week got their attention, but who knows? I already told you about Signetti. I mean, he did a heck of a job last year. He really did. They were very successful, made it in the playoffs. Yeah, they were a solid team. Key matchups to watch is Kennesaw State's pass rush versus Indiana's offensive line. Again, there is a variety of blitz packages, 4 sacks last week, where Indiana only allowed 1 sack last week. Another matchup is obviously Indiana's run game versus KSU's front 7. Speedy linebackers, undersized but fast, and have a lot of heart and can hit. As we already mentioned, Dexter Williams and Aiden Fisher, which is the wide receiver, the 6'5" wide receiver versus our best corner. This will have a huge impact on the game. If you can't throw it deep to this player because Washington has him locked down, then that will create a situation where Indiana will be forced to run the ball, which now you can start calling plays because you know what's coming versus you don't know what's coming. You haven't taken anything away. Some X factors, Kennesaw State's turnover margin. They caused a fumble. They didn't recover it last week against Wake. That would have been helpful. But Indiana got 3 turnovers, I think, last week against Old Dominion, so you definitely got to watch out for that. Indiana had a lot of penalties last week. They had 6 penalties for 55 yards. You can't do that. You can't take a team lightly. There should not be a weather impact on this game, so that's good. So we don't have to worry about that. So just to go over these numbers again, I got so much stuff written down. Indiana, 35.5 point favorite. I've already told you that. Over under 51.5. The money line is Indiana minus 5,000, KSU plus 2,500. Throw 100 down, win $2,500 if you take Kennesaw State. Just some tips there, not advertising to bet or anything like that, but it's out there. I don't know. I keep thinking about it. I was really impressed last week, but I also don't want to drink the hopium or whatever it is. I just don't know. I mean, I was so impressed last week by the effort that I saw on the field with Kennesaw State. And I felt good. I felt good coming home from Winston-Salem. And I thought, that what I saw on Friday night will travel against multiple opponents. It's not just, it's not fluky. I mean, that's just hard-nosed football. That's aggressive, tempo, running the ball, making smart decisions. That'll play against anybody. So I felt great coming home. And then I see the spread on Monday of 35.5. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, that blew me away. It really did. I mean, I can take something in the teens or low 20s. That's fine. But 35 points, I mean, that's a spread you see when these big boys play. I don't know. You probably saw them all weekend, but teams you've never heard about, like Northern Arizona. I don't know Northern Arizona. I couldn't tell you. If you don't know their mascot, then they're a small team probably. There were some ridiculous games this weekend. That Texas, Commerce, A&M versus SMU. I mean, those are the kind of spreads you see in those games. But Kennesaw State's a Division I football team. So there's a level of disrespect, I think, or lack of knowledge to say it's 35.5 is the spread. I mean, that blows my mind. I don't see it. If you do partake in gambling, I would take Kennesaw State in the 35.5 all day long. Don't get mad at me if I'm wrong about it, but I just don't see it. I don't see it. That offense is able to score. The defense is scrappy, and they're going to play with a lot of heart because they are doing everything they can to be relevant, to turn this program around. And, you are a player as well, and it's like the old saying when they talk about bulletin board material. You can be as angry as you want until you get hit in the face, right? Until you get smacked in the mouth by another player. And that's true. However, you can also underestimate an opponent. You can also underestimate what an opponent is capable of, and you can take your foot off the gas sometimes, and that can get you in trouble. And it's really hard to get fired back up once you've kind of taken your foot off the gas. So we'll see. I don't like the 35.5. Now, if you want to tell me the score is 35-21, I can live with that. That's a reasonable score. I think that, what gets me with this one game, the way I think about it, and we're going to keep it real here, is that Indiana's going to have a lot more depth than Kennesaw State. So this is a game that if Kennesaw State's able to keep it close going the second half, I think Indiana will have a difficult time pulling away. You got to be careful of losing control of your emotions in the game in the first half. You've got to keep it close. You got to start stressing the home team out a little bit and making them second guess themselves. It's when things happen. That's when upsets take place, when the other team is pressing so hard to make a play instead of just going back to fundamentals. So it's really up to Indiana. How motivated are they in this game? How much do they want to play? How much do they want to win? Did last week's game wake them up a little bit of what's possible? I don't know. It seems like a very comfortable game to me. So we'll have to see. But I'm going to go 35-21 as my final, with Indiana winning the game. And, and then I'll come on and I'll do a review on Sunday so you can have it for Monday, and we'll keep on doing it. And then, wait for it. Hold on. Let me check my trusty schedule guide real fast and see kind of what is on the horizon, because as you know, as we get into it a little bit, I start losing track because I'm watching so much football, as most of you are out there. It was a great weekend to have football back, by the way. Really enjoyed it a great deal. So Merrimack is September 13th. That's a win. Then it looks like Arkansas State followed up by Middle Tennessee State. And there's a bye before Louisiana Tech. So we'll come back and we'll look at Merrimack. Is that right? Yeah, Merrimack. How about that? They played pretty well this weekend, I think. I can't remember who they played, but it was closer than I thought it should have been because I saw that name and I was like, name's familiar to me. And I can't remember who they played. I need to look that up. But that doesn't mean that they're going to lose the Kennesaw State's going to lose the game. It just I just had caught my attention this weekend when I was looking at the scores. Anyways. Thanks for joining me, guys. Like and subscribe. Send me some comments. I'll be more than happy to answer them. All proceeds go back to the show. Thank you so much for your support, and we will see you on Sunday. All right, bye.